We are now on Daf Dalid, and we're going to begin where we left off yesterday with Rav Ashi Omar. And by way of introduction, we'll say the following. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he has a particular transmission of the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, in which case Rabbi Yeshua is of the opinion that if you have something that's sold with a counting of each individual unit, that's called a davar shebiminion, it's not batel. And that applies even in a case where it's darko limanos, where although sometimes it is counted individually, sometimes it's not. Rabbi Yochanan says that the Tana the Beitza, who is of the opinion that a Beitza that gets mixed up with other Beitzim is not B'tela B'rov, is this same Beitza, this same Shita, the Tana of Litra Ktzios of Rabbi Yeshua, who holds that even if something is generally, let's say, counted, other times it's not counted, it's L'chumra, and you suspend Bittul. So if you have Truma and Chulin, you cannot use Bittul, according to Rabbi Yeshua, in a case of a litra of Ktzios, which is sometimes sold by unit, by counting. So too, in the case of a Beitza, which sometimes is counted, it's considered davar shebiminion and it's not batel. Now, at this point, we're going to go back to a kasha the Gemara on Daf Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara wants to know, why is it that in the Beitza it says that a Beitza that had a suffix about it is asura. According to both Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchak, a Beitza shenolda b'yantiv is only a rabbinic isa, whether it's because of mashkim shezavu shamiyali v'yitlosh, it's exer d'Rabbana. But there's no doraisa here. We should apply the principle of suffix doraisa l'kula. I'm sorry, suffix d'Rabbana l'kula. Rav Ashi Omar li ulam suffix b'yontov suffix b'chol. We don't know if this egg was laid yesterday on chol or today on yontiv, and yet it's not batel. We will not apply a principle of suffix d'Rabbana l'kula. That'll be davar sheyesh lo matirin, which means something that if you wait just a matter of time, in this case, wait to eat the egg until after yontif, it'll be mutter. And kol sheyesh lo davar sheyesh lo matirin afilu b'derabanan lo batel. We don't apply bittul when we just have to wait a certain amount of time in order to eat it behet. So that's called a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Let's say, for example, according to some, chametz would be a davar sheyesh lo matirin because after Pesach it's mutter. Therefore, if it gets mixed up, there's no bittul. Chadash might be a davar sheyesh lo matirin, ma'aser sheni chutz l'Yerushalayim. All these cases where there's a matir, which will allow you, then why apply bittul in which you have a mixture of iser? We're going to suspend the principle of bittul. And that's going to apply to a Beitza, which is prohibited midrabanan. Tanya, acherim omer mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Beitza te'achel hi ve'ima. If an egg is laid on yontif, you can eat the egg and you can eat the mother. B'mayaskina, the Gemara analyzes this statement of Rabbi Eliezer, as quoted by acherim. Ilem, if it's a case of Tanagolos omeres lachila, if the Tanagolos itself was designated for shkita, to eat it on yontif, then pshita dehi ve'ima shari. It doesn't seem to be any chiddush here, quoting Rabbi Eliezer, to be matter both the mother and the egg that was born to this mother, to the hen, because there's no mukta in the mother, it's omeres lachila, and the Beitza has the same status as the mother. And the Gemara is now looking for another interpretation of this statement of Rabbi Eliezer in order to give it a chidush. Ella v'tarnagolas homedes legal Beitza. Now, if it's a tarnagolas that was designated for Beitza, then the tarnagolas, the mother, is muktzah. It was not designated for achila. So the Gemara asks, he ve'ima asura. How could it be that you're telling me in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that he ve'ima te'ochel? Impossible. We're dealing with a classic muktzah case. The mother was the gadol beitza, not for shkita, and the beitza is nola. Rabbi Zera te'ochel agav ima. What the Bryce has in mind is that the mother, the hen, if the situation will be, and we'll see exactly how to determine this, that the mother can be eaten and the vlad can be eaten. Hechi dami, when can you eat both the mother and therefore the beitza that she gives birth to? Omar Abai kigon shalakachas tam. He purchased the tarnagolas without any intention to designate it this way or that way. He's got an open mind. Nishchita, if during the course of Yontif he decides to check the hen, Huverva, now we have clarification, Dilachila Medes, that this tarnagolas was designated for Achila. And therefore she and the Beitza muteres. Lo Nishchita, but if he did not shech the tarnagolas, the mother, then a huvra de legadol Beitza moment. Now we clarify that Tam machshava, when he bought it, is really a machshava for legadol Beitza, which means that we now have a situation of both the mother and the egg are muktzah. Rav Mari Omar, offering an alternative interpretation, Rabbi Eliezer, we're talking about a tarnagolas so medes lachila. And you asked me the question, well, what's the chiddush? Now keep in mind, we're going to say that even though the Beitza was nolda, it's nolad, nevertheless, Beit Shammai already in our Mishnah, matir nolad. So therefore, the thrust of the chiddush of Rabbi Eliezer is to be matir the Beitza. The fact that tarnagolas is muteris, the hen itself, that's shita, as you said before. Nobody questions that. It was a tarnagolas omedes lachila. Guzma ktani means sometimes once you have a chiddush, you'll add some tosefes, you'll add some surplus, which is superfluous, but guzma, just to emphasize your point. Hisanya, we learned in a Beitza, Achirim Omer Bishum Rabbi Eliezer, Beitza Teyochel, Ive Ima. V'chein, Efroach Uklipasa. What is the klipa of the little of the little Efroach? My klipasa. Ilemel klipa mamish. If you're really talking about the shell of the Efroach, is klipa basachilahi? You're telling me to eat the klipa. What does that mean? He uklipasa, meaning Efroach for klipasa, is teochel. What do you mean? You can't eat a klipa, it's not edible. Crack one of your teeth. So to say eat the chicky and its shell makes no sense. El Efroach bikli pasa, which means that the chick was not hatched yet. And here we have an issue of treifa. Ad kan lo pli rabbanan alei d'Rabbi ben Yaakov. This is machlokas later on in Daf Vav between the Chacham and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. At what point is an Efroach, a chickie, considered a viable being, and therefore you can shecht it and eat it? And the argument is that at some early stage, for example, if the chickie has not opened up its eyes yet, it's not developed, and it's asur b'achila. And that's the shita, in fact, of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov later on in the Sugya Daf Vav. Elahecha de yotza lavero. This machlokes regarding the efrach is after the efrach, the little chickie, was born. It came out of the shell. Everybody agrees that it's also. It's too early of a stage. You don't have a viable being. So why is it that in this brisa of Acherim in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, it says that he uklipaso, efrach uklipaso, is mutter? If it's a case where it was already born, that would be the subject of machlokas. But if we're talking about klipa, means it broke out of the klipa, and the chickie is now a viable being on its own, that's called yotza le'avra olam, then we could have machlokas about the status of the chickie because it hasn't yet opened its eyes. But if it hasn't even been hatched yet, then everybody agrees that it's awesome. So what does the brisa mean when it says, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, efroach uklipaso, is mutter? What does that mean? It's mutter. I mean, you could only say it's mutter if it's already been born. That means yotza li'avra olam. So we must be talking about a case of yotza li'avra olam. So then what does the word klipa mean? It must mean the shell. Who can eat the shell? Elos, the Gemara says we have no choice, that the Bryce is talking about a froach that was already hatched. Otherwise, there's no one would say it's mutter. And it broke out of its klipa. And then what do you tell me that I can eat the klipa? I mean, if you tell me I can eat the afrach when it's inside its klipa, nicha. But nobody holds like that. Everybody agrees it's awesome. El afrach uklipaso guzma. When it says you can eat, you can eat the shell, that's a guzma. That's superfluous. Nobody can eat the shell. But like telling you it's mutter and you can even eat the shell. Somebody once said, I'm so hungry, I can even eat the dish, the plate on which the food is being served. Hachanami, here too, in the price that we quoted earlier, ima, guzma, there was no need to mention the ima because we're talking, according to our Murray, about Tanagolas Medes Lachila, and that's Pshita. But guzma, it's a superfluous language. Itmar. Now we're going to talk about a machlokas with regard to Shabbos and Yontif that are spuchim zelazeh. And a Beitza was laid on the first of the 2 days. Shabbos v'Yontif, Rav Omar nolda b'zeh, Asur b'zeh, Rabbi Yochanan Omar nolda b'zeh, Muteres b'zeh. Rav says that when the Beitza was laid on the first of these 2 days, whether it would mean Shabbos and then Yontif, or Yontif and then Shabbos, is Asura. It's always going to be Asura, even on the second day. Rabbi Yochanan says no. Nolda b'zeh, Muteres b'zeh, it's put on the second. Neymar, shall we analyze this machlokas in the following way? Rav is of the opinion that Shabbos and Yontif is Kedusha Achasi. It's like 48 hours of continuous Yontif, of Kedusha Yom. And it's considered like one long day. And therefore, since the egg is certainly also, according to everyone, on the first day, then it's also on the second day as well. Asura Beitza B'Yosah Yom, Hinolda, then it's considered Asura B'Yom HaSheni as well, because the Yom HaSheni is Kedusha Achas. So the Gemara says, if that's the way you're going to interpret Rav, Ha'omar Rav, you have a contradiction because Rav in Masechet Be'eruv Daf Lamed Ches says that halacha karbaz kenu. The halacha accepts 4 tanoim that are mentioned there in the Gemara in Eruvin. V'aliba de Rabbi Eliezer. And we accept the Shita, says Rabbi Eliezer, the Omar, Shtei Kedushos, that these 2 days, even though they're consecutive, one leading into the other, are 2 separate Kedushos. One is the Kedusha Shabbos, and the other Kedusha Yom Tov. And the reason why you can set up an Eruv, if let's say you're not sure which direction you want to go, so you set up one Eruv and then another Eruv, each Eruv in different directions. And the reason for that is because we're talking about Shtei Kedushos. So in Shtei Kedushos, in that framework, you can set up 2 Eruv. And each Eruv is separate for its Kedushos. You'll have one Eruv for Shabbos, another Eruv for Yom Tov. And they may be going in 2 different directions. And as a result of setting up these 2 Eruvim, he can go towards one side out of the city limits, 2,000 Amma, and the next day, from a different direction, go 2,000 Amma. Each Eruv will be effective for that day, for respective. So now we have a stira. On the one hand, we said that Rav holds us Beitza because of Kedusha Achas, but we see that Rav accepted the opinion of Shtei Kedushas. Ella, says the Gemara, you know how to reconcile this? It's Rav who holds that these 2 days are Shtei Kedushas. Why then does he prohibit Rav a Beitza Shenolda B'Rishon B'Sheni? Why should be also B'Sheni if you're holding Shtei Kedushas? Ela hacha b'achana de Rabba kamifligi. The machlokas revolves about hachana de Rabba. You may remember back on Daf Beis, Rabba says you need a chol hamechin l'Shabbos. Ein Shabbos mechino l'Yontif, ein Yontif mechin l'Shabbos. And Rabba applied this principle even to something that was muchan b'dei shamayim, like a Beitza Shenolda. So Sudas Yontif requires, according to Rabba, like Sudas Shabbos, hazmana on chol before the Shabbos, before the Yontif. It's got to have a hazmana designated for use on Shabbos, designated for use on Yontif. Rav Islay Achana de Rabba. Rav accepted the shita of Achana de Rabba, and therefore the egg becomes asura even on Yontif Sheni, even on the second day. I shouldn't call Yontif Sheni, confuse you, but I mean the second day that's endowed with Kedusha Yom, whether it be Yontif or Shabbos, depending on the sequence. And the reason for this is because it did not have a Achana miyom chol. And therefore, it's also under the law of Hachana de Rabba. Rabbi Yochanan, Leslie Hachana de Rabba, he never accepted Hachana de Rabba, and therefore he's matir the egg. You can eat the egg on the second day. Gemara says, Ketanoi, the machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is really an earlier machlokas Tanoi. That's recorded in the following price. Beitza Shenolda B'Shabbos Te'ochel B'Yontif, B'Yontif Te'ochel B'Shabbos. So the Tanakama, this brisa reflects the shita of Rabbi Yochanan that when you have these 2 consecutive days of Sayom, that's Shabbos and Yontif, you can be matir the Beitza on the second day. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he disagrees. Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Adayin hi machlokas. Machlokas in our Mishnah that a Beitza Shenolda B'Yontif applies even in this scenario. Shebeit Shammai Omrim Te'achel, the Beitza can be eaten tomorrow, even if it's Shabbos. Ubeis Hillel Omrim Lo Te'achel. Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, and that means that Beitza Shenolda B'Yontif we're going to still have machlokas between Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel on the next day. And we can say, therefore, that Rabbi Yochanan is reflected in the Shita Beis Hillel, and Rav in the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer. The Gemara now tells us the following story. Ushpizchane, that's the owner of the inn, the Rav Ada bar Rava, where Rav Ada bar Rava was a frequent client. Havile hanach beitzim miyontif l'shabbos. In other words, he had eggs that were laid on Yontif following Shabbos. And now, well, actually, it means Samach l'Shabbos. So let's take a case where Yontif was on a Friday. So the egg was laid on Friday, and now on Shabbos, he wants to eat the egg. Also, he comes in front of Rav Ada bar Rava. Amalei, my leitvinu ha'idna v'nelchinu lichna l'mach. Can I prepare them on Yontif and roast them in order to eat them tomorrow on Shabbos? In other words, he knew that on Yontif itself you are prohibited, you're enjoined from eating the Beitza. And that's because Beitza Shenol B'Yontif is Asura. But his suffix, he vacillated about whether or not you could be metaltal them with Tzorach Achanas Shabbos. Amalei, Tzorvada responded, "My datech, what's your svara to say tomorrow the egg is muteres?" Certainly, it's because in your mind, we have a machlokas Rav and Rav Yochanan and halachic Rav Yochanan. And therefore we could be matir like Rav Yochanan. No. You're making a mistake. I'm feeling Rav Yochanan Kachari El Doma. He's going to allow you to like puncture a little hole in the egg and drink out its insides. Limachar on Shabbos itself. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to cook it, but you can suck out the liquids inside of it. Aval b'yomei on Yontif, when the egg was actually born, low. Rabbi Yochanan was never matir tiltul. It's muktzah. And you won't be able to fry it or roast it. And now Rav Ada bar Rava wants to bring a proof to his presentation. He says, Vasanya, I have a brisa that supports me. Echad Beitza Shenol b'Shabbos, Echad Beitza Shenol b'Yontif. Ein metaltal so lo lachasas ba'as hakli lo sismach olav kari amito, which we discussed in yesterday's shir. So we see explicitly in this brisa that a Beitza Shenol b'Yontif is asura b'tiltal on that day. Now the Gemara tells another story. Ushpezachne derav papa amrile hau gavra the osel kamei derav papa. It was either the innkeeper or somebody who came in front of Rav Papa. And Havile, he had Hanach Beitza Mishabbos Liyontiv, the exact same case that we've been dealing with. The egg was laid on Shabbos. And Yontif is on Sunday. Asal Lekameh, he comes in front of Rav Papa on Shabbos, Amalei, can I eat this egg tomorrow on Yontif? In other words, do we pass like Rav that prohibits it, or like Rabbi Yochanan who permits it? Now, this question was being asked to Rav Papa before he was halachically in a state where he has license to give a hurrah to paskin to answer questions. Amalei, so our Papa turns to the Ushpezichna and says to him, Zil ha'idna v'tolamacha. Go away now and ask me this question tomorrow. Why can't I answer you tonight? Immediately. The Rav lo muki amora le miyom kaval lechav. Rav would never darshan barabin unless it was before the Suda. But if it was Yontif Liachar Suda, he would wait till the next day. Mishum Shikrus. Shikrus means intoxication, but it really means that he won't be clear in his thought process. He may make a mistake. And therefore, Afani and he wrote Papa responded, I don't want to give you a ruling and a response because I've just eaten my Sudas Yantif. And Yovel Lahoros Lideitos, the word shikra here, shikras means a kind of intoxication in which your mind is not absolutely crystal clear. But come back to me tomorrow before the Sudas Yantiv, and I'll give you a clear answer. He also, so this innkeeper or a different person came back the next morning. Amalei, so Rav Papa responded, Iku hashta, imagine what I would have mistakenly paskin for you yesterday. Ishtalai, I forgotten halacha, the Amri law, and I would have told you, again, not deliberately, but inadvertently, based on what is makubal b'yadenu, what we have as a general rule, Rav Yochanan, we have a principle that in a machlok Shin Rav and Rabbi Yochanan we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore Beitza shenolda b'Shabbos muteres b'yontif. That's what I would have told you had I not pushed you off. But it's a good thing I pushed you off. Amar Rava, there are three exceptions to this rule. Hilchas hakavasi de Rav b'hani tlas bein lekula bein lechumra. There are three cases of a machlokas Shin Rav and Rabbi Yochanan where Rava says, we're going to pass like Rav, whether Rav is the Mekil or the Mach. And what are these three dinim? Number one is Beitza Hanoledes. And we're going to pass like Rav L'chumra, that the Beitza is Asura even on the second day, whether it's Shabbos or Yom. And then we have Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Golios, and we have an issue about an egg that was laid on the first day. Can we eat it on the second day? We have a similar case in Shnei Yomim Shel Rosh Hashanah, when the egg was laid, was nolda on the first of these 2 days. Is it also on the second?